So here's this from the Gnostic text. There's a quote from the Secret Book of John, and it says, Yaldabaoth, which is the demiurge, he said to the authorities, and the Archons, that's the word for ruler or authority, it says, come, let us create a human being after the image of God and with a likeness to ourselves, so that this human image may give us light. So that, I mean, that sounds like very much like a quote out of the Bible, right? I mean, created in the image of God and all that. But here it's saying that so that it will give us light. And so these Gnostics put forth ideas about the universe being like a holographic copy, a couple thousand years ago. And in the Gnostic book On the Origin of the World, it was written, quote, likeness emanated, became a product resembling the primeval light, manifested as a likeness of heaven. So, it's talking about like a copy of the original, right?
The fraudulent copy.
So it says, come, let us create a man out of earth, according to the image of our body and according to the likeness of this being, to serve us, so that when he sees his likeness, he might become enamored of it. No longer will he ruin our work. Rather, we shall make those who are born out of the light our servants for all the duration of this eternal realm. And it says, now all of this came to pass according to the forethought of Pistis. So this is obviously from the book Pistis Sophia. In order that man should appear after his likeness and should condemn them because of their modeled form. And their modeled form became an enclosure of the light. And it is they who were taken captive according to their destinies by the prime parent. And thus they were shut into the prisons of the modeled forms until the consummation of the age. I mean, that pretty much spells it out right there.
Boom, right in your face.
And then the Gospel of Philip says, quote, God is a man-eater. For this reason, men are sacrificed to him, end quote.
Right there. Right. Plain as day.
Right. I'll even throw in a few NDEs here to round it all
out.
But it says,
please do.
This NDE, her name was Nancy C. So she says, anyway, as I came back and entered my body, I was overcome with the limitations of life. How seeing, tasting, feeling, hearing, and smelling were nothing compared to the freedom of being without a body, and how literally trapped I felt. It was kind of like being thrown into jail. My spirit was trapped in this gross body. That sums up the Gnostic belief right there. And Victor B. said, I became sullen, serious, and fearful. Most of all, I felt an overwhelming loneliness. Having glimpsed what true joy and loving connections our souls are meant to have, I felt trapped, still do, in a penitentiary of flesh and bone that imprisons and inhibits our souls. I feel that humans spend most of their lives hoping to find true love and wanting to connect in some way with others. I believe our souls know how it should be. And then finally, Maria R. said, here we are limited. The body is a prison, and the real world is a nest of germs and filth, of smells and volatile substances that now make me nauseous, but it didn't used to be that way before my experience. A little bit on the farm, these entities feed off our auric field from an overtone away from our wavelength. And the theme of entities feeding off our energy or life force is pretty prevalent even in today's society. You got vampire movies. The living dead are also quite a phenomenon. People love to joke about the coming zombie apocalypse, right? And most religions believe in demons, which can possess a soul. And of course, Catholic priests even perform exorcisms in more severe cases. The Teaching Company has some great courses and lectures on the Maya, Aztec, and Inca cultures and their propensity for human sacrifice.
Human sacrifice is one of the most common themes throughout our history. It's everywhere.
And you had the Druids too with the Wicker. Have you ever seen that movie Wicker Man?
Yes.
And now we got the Burning Man festival and all that stuff. On the Aztecs, he says, but although the sun and moon are now in the sky, neither of them moves, so the gods decide they have to sacrifice themselves to feed the sun's desperate thirst to help it move. Quetzalcoatl, one by one, cuts out the hearts of the other gods and offers them to the sun, which then begins to move. He says the message is clear. As the gods themselves had to sacrifice themselves to get the cosmos going, so humans must supply hearts and blood to ensure that the fifth sun will continue each morning to rise in the east, making all of life possible. He says, a steady supply of hearts and blood was essential, not only for the Aztecs themselves, but for all the people of the earth itself, and the gods beyond. The purpose of war was the feeding of the gods. The shaman are known to extract these attachments or intrusions, as they're called. And Carlos Castaneda mentions demonic possession at length in his book, The Active Side of Infinity. And in his character, Don Juan says, we have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our Lord and Master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to act independently, it demands that we don't do so. I have been beating around the bush all the time, insinuating to you that something is holding us prisoner. Indeed, we are held prisoner. He says, this was an energetic fact for the sorcerers of ancient Mexico. They took us over because we are food for them, and they squeeze us mercilessly because we are their sustenance. Just as we rear chickens in chicken coops, the predators rear us in human coops, human arrows. Therefore, their food is always available to them. The mystic Rudolf Steiner said, there are beings in the spiritual realms for whom anxiety and fear emanating from human beings offer welcome food. When humans have no anxiety and fear, then these creatures starve. If fear and anxiety radiates from people and they break out in panic, then these creatures find welcome nutrition and they become more and more powerful. These beings are hostile towards humanity. She wrote a book called The Unquiet Dead, A Psychologist Treats Spirit Possession. It's Dr. Edith Fiore, and she's a hypnotherapist. She wrote about many of her clients having spirit attachments. And then there's another near-death experiencer named George Ritchie who wrote a book called Return from Tomorrow. And he recounts a near-death experience where he saw spirits attaching themselves to people's auras, especially in bars, and living vicariously through them. Then you've got Dolores Cannon as another hypnotherapist who regresses patients and wrote the book Keepers of the Garden, because you think of the title Keepers of the Garden, it's like to the aliens, Earth is like an experiment and they're like gardeners, right? Mm-hmm. Where they're crops, I guess you could say. So the ancient Gnostic texts also mention a species of these mind parasites called the Archons. And in the pilot episode for the original Star Trek series, The Cage, also called the Menagerie, it depicts a very similar race of beings who, in ufological circles, are referred to as the Little Grays. And most near-death experiencers describe being drawn to the tunnel, moving toward the tunnel, finding themselves going towards or being pulled in. And if the soul is a light body, then it have little or very little no mass. But what I think happens is these accumulations of heavy energies or emotions, such as are like holding grudges towards people or harboring guilt, and that can attract them, which the Archons, which attach to the aura or the electromagnetic energy of the soul to give it more mass. So these Archons are probably like leeches that just, stick on the soul. And I think Carlos even mentioned about the blade in the back. I forget what he called it, but that's one of the attachment points. His name is Dr. Stephen J. Banco, and he's a shamanic energy healer. And on his website, he claims, quote, while the illumination process combusts most energies in the luminous energy field, some toxic energies can crystallize, becoming nearly material objects which are impossible to metabolize through the illumination process. They are like petrified wood which no longer burns, and these crystallized energies embed themselves in the physical body. Amazon shamans believe that crystallized energies are the result of black magic or sorcery. We found these energies can be caused by anger, envy, or hatred directed at us by another person. And sometimes they are also energetic remnants, memories of how we died, how we were hurt, or how we were killed in a former existence. He says they are sludge and energetic residues encrusted in the chakra. Another shaman that my friend had gone to see said the black goo hardens over time and becomes harder to get off, and it's attached to our energy bodies and the result of trauma and material attachment. So, it could, like in theory, weigh you down when you leave the body. Or I know my friend that had a near-death experience when he was going up, all these attachments were like coming off of him. And then on the website DMT Nexus, this person said, I could see entities more distinctly this time. Two in particular watched me arriving and being settled into this landscape. It was like they were farmers. I was being milked or something. I came to realize I was being distracted with information so that they could do what they wanted. Feed, harvest. During these stages, I would have recurring flashes or images of some jellyfish-like creature or something like an octopus with suckered tentacles. Whatever it was, I felt like I was connecting to the tendrils or to the tentacles during this feeding phase. So Val, in his Matrix book series, writes, quote, "It is they, the gray aliens in parentheses, who await in the light when a human being dies. The human being is then recycled into another body, and the process begins all over again. Hence the light and tunnel at death trap. Scanning someone they wish to recycle as they near death. The aliens discover who the person was close to has died. They project the person's image in the white light tunnel, and the image waves you in deeper. If you choose to follow, you can be trapped and sent to another incarnation of their choice. These entities view Earth as a big farm." Now, it's not always the case that you'll have somebody wave you in kind of thing, but I mean, it does probably happen. So,
if you start to feel as if you're on your way out.
yeah, and the veil may start to thin during that period where you might start seeing relatives or people you don't know, strangers.
Yeah, and, people, I mean, like deathbed visions, visitations,
yes.
Those are
after death communication.
Yeah, I mean, that
visions.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes it could be, religious deities. It's something that resonates with you, whether negative or positive, something big in your life, some sort of belief system, something that is deep within you, no matter what it is.
Yeah, just to piggyback on Val's comment about it was the grays that wait there. And one particular by Ruth said that she's met with a council of grays and said that they were in charge of recycling of souls. Kenneth Ring, he, in one of his books, has a whole chapter on the similarities between near-death experiences and alien abductions. So with the light and all that stuff. And then you got alien researcher Carla Turner. She said, "My best opinion is that it is some form, metaphorically speaking, of farming, that we have some source for something, qualities of physical materials, our energetic energy patterns. I have no idea. We might find that they could be considered more correctly, perhaps interloping farmers in the way that we as a species has taken over wild animals time and again and domesticated them and genetically altered them for our benefit." Linda Moulton Howe, she said, "The praying mantis aliens claim to be in charge of our spiritual evolution." And she said, quote, "If the recycling of souls is the machinery in this universe, one could argue philosophically that entropy in this universe was designed so that there would be a recycling of souls to grow and strengthen and evolve." The pioneer, Robert Monroe, quote, "From experience, the collectors have evolved an entire technology with complementary tools for the harvesting of loosh from the Type 4M units. The most common have been named love, friendship, family, greed, hate, pain, guilt, disease, pride, ambition, ownership, possession, sacrifice, and on a larger scale, nations, provincialism, wars, famine, religion, machines, freedom, industry, trade, to list a few. Loosh production is higher than ever before." He says, "We were indeed producing something of value, loosh. Loosh, an energy generated by all organic life in varying degrees of purity, the clearest and most potent coming from humans, engendered by human activity which triggers emotion, the highest of such emotions being love. Is love loosh? Using the same stuff, interactive experience, one began to learn to express anger, pain, fear, and all the rest. And finally, hopefully, if you pass the course, a special energy waveform called love. Yet we don't really know what it is. To learn to be high-quality loosh love producers, and those who possess loosh find it vital for whatever it is used for. Faced with this question of supply and demand, someone decided to produce it artificially, so to speak, rather than search for it in its natural form. He decided to build a garden and grow loosh."
I think the whole garden aspect to it's really fascinating too. We could talk about the Garden of Eden. Yeah,
it's the Garden of Eden.
We got some eating to do.
Got some human beings in that garden. You may never display actual loosh radiation, but you have a vital part in its production. And finally, he wrote, "It must be quite a place to handle that much loosh this somewhere. It would fall neatly into many concepts of heaven." That's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's right in your face.
In one of his YouTube lectures, I think it's called Wednesday with him or something like. He talks about this being that's like a demiurge. Yep. He was speculating on why we came down, he said basically we got trapped, but we made a deal basically with this. He called him the entry director. Talked about how the entry director would place you into a body here on Earth.
It's like the whole bullshit council of elders or your wannabe guide or quote unquote ascended masters, all these bullshitters to just keep this cycle running. It's really, really some sick stuff.